Souls. I'm your host, Angela Ahimsa, broadcasting live from Toronto, Ontario, and you are watching Jesse TV streaming worldwide on Roku, Meta, NCG Television Network, and of course, jessefm.ca, and probably Facebook or Instagram, wherever you're catching this. And let me tell you, today we have a truly iconic moment in the making. Joining us today is Phil Moulton. He's a 9th Dan Black Belt, former world and European karate champion, and elite close protection expert who's worked with names like Whitney Houston, the British royal family, David Beckham, and many more. So grab your tea or your coffee and your chi, and of course your curiosity, because this is going to be one powerful, entertaining, and definitely an interview to remember. So thank you so much, Phil, for joining us.
You're very welcome, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Lovely. And you're joining us from England?
I am, yes. Not too bad. It's nice and sunny. We've just had a little bit of a downpour, but I'm joining you from Manchester in the UK.
Nice. I do love Manchester. So I'm just inspired to know what actually triggered you into wanting to become a bodyguard. Like, how did you get started in that particular field?
I got interested in it many years ago. Ironically, the first introduction that I had of looking after a person was my actual mother.
Oh. Many
years ago, she was harassed by a group of people, and she was getting married. She was getting married one day. It was the 4th wedding, so there was a group of people who decided to target my mum. And basically what I did, was 16 at the time, I asked the taxi driver, or the limo driver, what you call them over the US, to bring the car onto the green, and basically got my mum into the car and off we drove. And that started a little bit of should we say, a little bit of an itch. And then later on, as I was teaching karate, a friend of mine said, you'd make a really good minder. And it just started to snowball from there at the age of probably 21, 22. And then eventually broke into it in the mid-90s, early 90s.
That's cool. So it's called minder in England?
Yeah, it was a minder, which is a very old-fashioned word. I mean, the use of it. Yeah, minding your business. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, minding your own business. So in the UK, we have different terminologies. So we have a bodyguard, which everyone calls everyone a bodyguard, or a close protection person. But in the US, you call it an executive protection officer.
Of course.
Sounds a bit more funky.
Yes. So can you share a moment on the job that really tested your skills and your intuition?
I've got many.
I mean,
that's why I've wrote the books, to get them out of my head. I think one of the iconic ones was the Whitney Houston one. So basically, Miss Houston was coming over to the UK to do European tour, and part of the remit was that she had to bring her own security, and then the place where she was staying had to provide security as well. So I had to support her team as looking after her. So I had the great honour of working with her for about 4 days. It was quite a sensitive one, which I won't even go into now. That was back in 1996. So it was a real, it was a sensitive issue why I was brought in to protect her. So my role was to keep, should we say, everything level and equal. So it was nice and calm. So that was my job. And that's probably one of the...
Because
Say again, sorry?
Called Bodyguard, and you were Whitney Houston's bodyguard. Was that video? Did it have anything to do with you?
No, unfortunately, no, it didn't. I actually declined the job. I declined the job at first because I was working on the corporate. I was looking after a corporate person at the time, and the friend of mine who was running the hotel where she was staying, I always picked up the cost protection at that particular place. And he said, Whitney's coming into town. And I said, yeah, I know. And it was a bit of a banter. And then actually on the Thursday, he said, would you mind coming over? And so I got dragged over there, not literally. Spoke to a couple of colleagues of the police service. And basically, they asked me to do the job. They needed somebody who could be quite level-headed and strong. So my third book, it's actually called Discipline and Duty, From Royalty to the Queen of the Night, which was part of Whitney's from the film The Bodyguard.
Yeah,
but
that's
no,
I
I still speak to one of Whitney's chief of security. I still speak to him today, which goes back over now, from 1996. So we still speak now. So it's nice to make good contacts. The job's a job, isn't it? Really, that's the way I look at it. But lots and lots of stories. The England football team, working with the likes of the legends David Beckham, when I was with the England team, obviously other people as well. But it's quite varied, shall we say. It's like you, because you're a cook. So we have different recipes that we've got to bring in to make the job work.
Mm-hmm. I'm a chef. So can you actually catch a punch like they do in the movies, or is that just Hollywood fantasy?
I think a lot of it is portrayed differently to what it is here in the UK, because the UK and the States is completely different the way we work in many different ways, because of the law is one of them. I used to do a lot of work with witnesses, so I used to do a lot of witness protection, which was quite, should we say, quite testing at times. So it's not as glamorous, but you've got high threats, you've got a high level of threat. So you have to have your wits about you. But now, for the last 30 years, or 20 odd years, I've been teaching close protection. I wrote one of the very first courses here in the UK, based on the civilian element of close protection. And I've trained probably nearly about 3,000 people over my career. So it's different. Working with celebrities, you've got to wear different hats. You've got to be a little bit more calmer and relaxed when you're working with a witness, or you're working with somebody they have got a serious threat on the head. You have to be a little bit more robust. You've got to know what you'll be doing, obviously. All your planning and preparation is so important. So again, going back to yourself, it's like making a recipe. You've got to make that recipe work, because if it doesn't, it can go sideways very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. So in that perspective, what's the number one ingredient or mindset shift that someone needs to truly have in order to feel safe and powerful in the body when protecting somebody like royalty?
I would basically say you've got to have that awareness, the situation. We call it situation awareness, which everyone has. Everyone's got situation awareness. It's just how you apply it. Another thing, what most people tend not to do is understand your principal or your client. Research the person that you're protecting, because you want to know the ins and outs of that person, the traits, how they work, their personality as well, because their personality is really important. Because remember, we've got to remember one massive thing is that we're protecting that person, and we've got to rotate our job around them. So we've got to make it comfortable for them. So it's being open. Your mindset has got to be really open, but you've got to be keen. You've got to be very, very sharp in what you do, and you've got to be quite dynamic. If you have a thick piece of wood, it'll break. So it's got to be quite flexible in what we're doing, and it's got to be tested. So there's a lot of ingredients, shall we say, to make that recipe work.
I understand. So you worked with different royalty and icons and global sports stars. Can you tell me one of the most wild moments that really stands out from your career in protecting others?
Working with royalty, it's the UK have their own protection team, so I was very honoured. I'll get this one out there straight away. It's called RASP, which is the Royal Specialist Protection. RASP, So I'm a civilian, so I'm not a policeman, I'm not a military person, so I'm a civilian. So I was very, very honoured to be asked to support them. So that was with His Royal Highness Prince Edward. I looked after Edward. I worked with the team for twice. I worked with Boris Johnson, which was the UK Prime Minister. So that was very, very well disciplined, very focused, let's say regimented, so everyone knew what they were doing. If you're working in the celebrity world and you're working with pop stars, it can go from 0 to 100 in the blink of an eye. so it can happen very, very quickly. I've worked with a number of footballers, Pele, Cantona, David Beckham, and some of those they can be quite testing. I was with Pele 3 times, and we got harassed by autograph hunters for 4 days. So we was followed around by the paparazzi, who was completely mithering us. But Pele, at the end of it, I don't know if you remember Pele, the legend, who was an absolute legend from Brazil. It becomes a little bit of a cliche with us, where we both stood together and we had a bit of a laugh about it. And there's some pictures of me and Pele having a laugh. But it can get very, very quickly. I'm not one for a gossip, even though I've wrote books. I try and keep and hold the court, really. And, but they are very, times can work very, very quickly. But it's down to us to contain it. So we're the miserable people who make people say, no, you can't do that. We're the killjoys, should we say.
Yeah. So what are some of the misconceptions people will probably have about bodyguards?
One of the biggest ones is you're looking at one.
Yeah.
I'm 5'9" on a good day. I'm not a shopping person. I'm not a military person. I'm not a police officer. But basically, most people have got a stereotype of a person who's a big, strong, strapping person. And they've been ex-military, ex-special forces. They can be anything, because we're working in the civilian world. We've got to be able to work with civilian people. Well, I believe everyone's got their own part to play. So I think I broke the mold. And my third book, my second book, Breaking the Mold in the Industry. And that's what I actually did. So you see that. So that's called Finding Your Niche.
Okay.
There you go. I'll send you a screenshot of that one so you can see that. But I think most people have got a misconception that these people are there for bullies and pushing people out of the way. Sadly, some people do that, but we've got to be professional, because we're actually working with the law. We have got to make sure that we're upholding the law. We're there not just to protect the principals from getting a punch or a slap or being attacked, also your image. Because if you've got an image, we need to make sure that that image is kept crystal clear. And that's another thing. And that comes down to the planning.
Okay, so let's paint a picture for the viewers of what a typical day would look like for you when you're protecting a high-profile client.
Okay, so basically what we would do, we would have done our RECA, we would have done our profiling of our principal. So let's just say we have a full team. Normally we could just be working on our own, just a driver and myself. So if we got the full team, everyone would be briefed up. The PA, who would be working with the principal, they would be giving us a brief of the itinerary of their movements for today. The SAP team, or the advanced team, they would go out and check all the venues prior. So we would come back and confirm them. So everything is done 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of us. So as we're arriving, there is a party already there waiting for us. Depending on what the problem is or the threat is, we may have counter surveillance watching us. So we're watching for people who are watching us. So if it's a big celebrity, let's just say, for instance, the paparazzi there, we need to know, can we move into the main area, or do we have to use a rear entrance? Do we have to use a secondary route? So all this is really, really important, and that comes down to your planning. Once we start getting movements, it moves very, very quickly. It's very dynamic. But that comes down to your planning. If you've got your plans in place, you can work with it. Sadly, in the industry, a lot of the industry is now gone quite diluted, so people work on it very quickly. So they dilute the recipe, let's just say, use that word, and things can go quite wrong. But when the plan, we've got to make sure that if we're protecting a person of interest, we're following their itinerary. So we know they're going to be there on time. If the paparazzi be there, we need to know who the paparazzi are. Is there a threat that we need to be aware of? Can we divert it? Is there any engagements that we need to be aware of? So a lot of it is communication skills. It's 95% planning. The rest of it is 5%, maybe a little bit of excitement every now and again. But most of it is the planning. So it is, I won't say it's a boring job. It can be very demanding.
Yeah. Do you ever get emotionally invested with any of the people that you're protecting?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Strictly
No.
business. Not like the Bodyguard.
No, no, definitely not. So,
I'm still trying to get that out of you. Do you ever
somebody
get
said to me
starstruck?
once, no,
You don't get starstruck
No.
either? Okay.
no. Part of my job when I was with the England squad, I was with the England squad for 10 years. I'm not a football person. I've done karate all my life. So I've done karate for, 55 years. So I'm clueless about football. So I could be stood next to David Beckham or anyone. Obviously, you've got an admiration of that person and you respect that person. But you do see a lot of celebrity bodyguards and they're in awe of that person. And I'm not. I'm there to do a job of work.
And
They're
just
not
there
our
to do their
friends.
job. I get it.
Say again, sorry.
I said, and they're just doing
Yeah.
their jobs.
Exactly, yeah, 100%. So, it's just that mutual respect that we should have. Obviously, we've got to be friendly. The longest person I've ever looked after was a footballer and his family. I was with him for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And basically, they suffered. There was a lot of house break-ins and burglaries, attacks on family homes here in the UK with footballers. And I had 11 footballers that I used to look after. So I got quite close to them. But again, you still got to keep professional.
Yeah.
You can be friendly, you can be approachable, which is so important, but you've got to make sure that you're professional throughout.
Yeah. Well, once you're emotionally
So-
invested, it actually is it could be potentially dangerous because that could cloud your judgment, right?
Yeah, 100%. Once you start getting a little bit attached to that person, your mindset completely changes. You become more of a friend rather than a protector. So you've got to be professional, and you've got to remember these people they've got a family life as well. So you've got to respect that. And there's nothing worse, I suppose, as a principal, having somebody like me wandering around following them and checking up on them, making sure that they're okay. So you've got to be so discreet. One of the footballers used to call me the ghost because it pops up here, there and everywhere. But that is because you're planning and you're putting things in place and you're trying to be very, very subtle about it. You're not sat on people's shoulders all the time, which can be quite draining for everyone, even including the security team. You've got to have that balance where you can distance yourself as well.
Yeah.
So it can be exciting. It is very fast-paced. It is very fast-moving. Again, it comes down to the person that you're protecting. If it's a showbiz person, very, very quick. If it's a dignitary, it's all very planned and staged out. So, you've got to wear different hats as well.
So what would be the first thing that you would scan when you enter a room with a client? Like what would be potentially a sign of danger or threat?
But when you're going into a room, I think what you can do is you've got to be able to look at a room and assess it by the people who are in that room. And again, going back to what we've done, we should already know who's going to be in that room before we enter the room. And then we're going to be looking at body language of people. We call them NVCs, non-verbal communication. So you can tell by a person if they're going to be reactive or not reacting to your principle. And you'll know when somebody's making a target to your principle. It could be somebody like an autograph hunter who gets really excited because they've seen maybe David Beckham and they come running over. And then you've got to be in between that, but not cause a problem or embarrass the principal. It's reading signs before you actually go into the area. Even reading signs of your principal. You get a feel of the person that you're protecting, where they feel uncomfortable, and you can actually judge it from there, whether they feel comfortable or basically they're not quite happy with the situation. So you go in, and it's quite dynamic, and that's a word we use quite regular. How you assess it. Mm-hmm. Once you've assessed it, you've got to know where you're going to take your principal if it does go a little bit wrong. And your principal's got to be aware of where you're going to be taking them as well.
Yes. I feel like dynamic is just another word for intuition, essentially.
Do you know something? I've never used it in that way, and it probably is because your intuition makes you work dynamically, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm very like
Exactly,
intuitive.
yeah.
So I read energy. I'm like, well, this doesn't feel right, but you're kind of essentially using your intuition to assess if people
Yeah.
are a threat, even just if they're just standing there by their energy.
You can, and that intuition is basically what you feel, your instinct in the back of your head, and you'll feel the hairs go up in the back of your neck, and you're thinking,
Yes, that's intuition. High five, boom. Have you ever had to actually physically intervene in a dangerous situation with one of your clients? And if so, what happened?
We had a situation many, many years ago. We've had a number of. I've been firebombed 5 times, looking after witnesses. I had a machete.
Got bombed with fire?
Like a Molotov cocktail, petrol bomb. And these were doing witnesses, and it's all documented in the book. But the one that stuck out in mind, which I talk about quite regularly, was I was looking after a lady who was a social worker, working for the government. She'd had a threat put on her, and somebody produced a threat. So we had to go in, do the protection on her. But the lady presented herself to where I was working, smashed the window, and then produced a machete.
Whoa.
So the lady ran out, so we put the thumb lock on the door. This was in Manchester, a place called Moss Side. So we put the thumb lock on the door. As we was getting out, she produced this machete and started hacking into vehicles. Now, as I'm watching there, these kids, these people with trolleys, with prams, etc. So the chap behind me, I asked him to lock the door behind me, and I ran at her. Now, I ran at that woman because basically there was people stood there with children. The police were called, and the lady ran off. She probably thought, who's this idiot? Look, running at her. And it's all true. I mean, my wife still shouts at me today, why did you do it? But there was children there, there was people there. It's not that I was a hero, you're just doing your job. And I was lucky. And she did run off, she turned tail. She did get arrested, she got sectioned, and everything else went wrong. But she did come back and firebomb the place eventually and make a right mess of the building. So that was one situation, which went down in the book, and we tell about it all the time. But even the police officer said to me, "Can you tell me why you decided to run at a person who's got a machete?" So, well, there's people there. That's what I had to do. My principal was safe, so I had to make sure that other people were safe around us, and I think that was just a job. Maybe a bit of stupidity, but using my instinct, should we say.
Yes. So since you've been doing this since the 90s, I'm sure that you've seen like how things have been changing, and especially now today with technology and the evolution of threats. How has modern technology changed the way you approach protection and the work that you do?
It's a good question, a very good question. It has changed dramatically. We get a lot of problems with drones. The drones that are flying around, and they're snooping on people's properties. We've got cyber security where people are hacking into people. But one thing that I've worked on since I've worked into the job was I do a lot of counter surveillance. So I do surveillance on people, counter surveillance. But that has to be accepted by the principal and people that there is something going on. Listening devices, where people put a listening device or maybe a covert camera. So it has increased, even down to your mobile phone.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
people use mobile.
Spyware.
Oh, I mean, people nowadays, they've got so techy, and I won't say devious, but they're actually thinking out the box how they actually want to do something. So it has really, really changed dramatically. But we still got to go back to the old-fashioned way of setting things up first.
Yeah.
But then understanding about the threats.
Yeah. It's like
which are out
physical safety first, and then the meta safety or the cyber safety.
Yeah, 100%. We've got to get the grounding first so we can understand what's going on. Because we need a person to actually put the cyber security out there or put the drone up there. So if you've got the person on the ground and you've done your basic planning, I won't say it's going to be easy, but at least you know what you're looking for. And that's like, again, using your initiative or your dynamic risk assessment, understanding how we deal with things.
Are cyber
but it has changed.
You actually worry about or do anything with, or are you mainly just physical?
We have to deal with cybersecurity, but I deal more on the counter surveillance stuff when I'm looking for people watching us. And that's making sure that, you know, people are hacking into cameras like we're on the camera now. Somebody could be actually watching us. And we're being watched and being watched. But you can get paranoid about it, and it's basically what will people be using with that information that they're gleaming from you? Is it something which is valuable? Because if you're looking at like a celebrity, what would be valuable for somebody to do cybersecurity on them? Paparazzi. It could be an invasion of privacy. A book launch. If you're looking at one of the massive authors and somebody got hold of the manuscript of a book that was being published before it was published, again, that's intellectual property. So we're looking at things like that.
Yeah. So anyways, that actually leads me into my next question, which is, there are different ways to be safe. And like, especially today with everything being online, like we have that whole security and privacy protection that's needed. How, in your definition, or like, what does it protection actually mean just beyond the physical safety? We've mentioned cyber safety. Is there anything else that you consider?
Cybersecurity is one of them. I mean, I'm not a big techie person, to be quite fair. I won't say I'm old-fashioned, but I'm not behind the door at coming forward. But I think going back to what we started about, your initiative or dynamic, but situation awareness. You'll know yourself when something's not right. You know, we talk about people at this moment in time where there's a lot of, here in the UK, we've got a lot of knife crime. And you'll know when something's brewing and when something's not quite right. So you're going to be assessing things. You walk down the street and you'll think, not happy with that. And when you're working with a principal, remember that person that you're protecting is a target, is an added target. Now that person may not be the intended target. It could be something, a threat by association, something completely innocent, wrong place at wrong time. Yeah. So it's all about your awareness, what you can put down yourself.
Your intuition, your bodyguard intuition.
Yeah. Well, there was a person that I looked after years ago called Steve Keane. He was a football manager. And he wrote in my book, he wrote the foreword on my book. And he said, people used to laugh when he used to do things because they didn't understand the reason why we were doing things. And his actual words was, Phil has like a sixth sense. Now, I thought it was a bit weird, that one. But when you listen and read it, it makes a lot of sense because he was at the other end receiving what I was doing. So he understood what I was doing and the reason why I was doing it. But people out the loop had no idea why I was checking that area or going into a room and clearing it beforehand. So, you know, it is a sixth sense that you pick up and it is an intuition that you're building.
It's just a heightened consciousness that you've learned to activate, and a lot of people aren't necessarily as conscious or aware of their surroundings or the energetics and stuff.
Yeah. So. There is a chap that I use his analogy. It's Colonel Cooper, he was a former US Marine. I think he was a colonel or lieutenant colonel, and he uses colonel's Cooper's color coding, which is white, yellow, orange and red. White is a state of awareness where you're completely blank. Orange, yellow is where you're a little bit more switched on and you've seen something and you think, not quite happy with that. Orange is when you actually recognise that there is a problem and you're going to take action either one way or the other. And red is either you've chose to ignore it or it's gone, you've dealt with it. There is black, which is a contact. So I use that in a lot of my safety training. So, because I teach people how to become safe as well. Take ladies' self-defense classes and awareness courses. Because we spoke about martial arts. I've done karate for 55 years, which means I'm quite high up as a graded person. But if you try and teach somebody who's never got a skill, you can't teach that person in a day or a couple of hours. But everyone's got that instinct and that awareness, how to deal with it.
Yeah. How important do you think it is for women to learn some form of self-defense today?
I lost half that
Mhm.
question. Sorry.
Yeah. Do you have any
Sorry,
recommendations?
could you repeat that?
I said, how important today, especially because things are getting really crazy out there, do you think that it is for women to learn some sort of self-defense?
100%. I think what everyone should be looking at would be awareness training.
Hmm.
So everyone can develop your own awareness training. Simple things like, if you're walking down the street, put your phone away. Put your phone away in your pocket. If your phone's ringing, your phone's going to basically take your attention, and it's going to distract you. Because there's that many people who are opportunists nowadays of stealing phones, who are causing problems. And a lot of these problems are basically, people will target somebody before you've seen them. They will be looking at you. They will be looking at a victim. So if you're acting all vulnerable and your head's down and you've got your earphones in, you're a victim straight away.
Yeah, but you
So
mentioned
rather than
eye
having
contact, right? So you see them.
100%,
Yeah.
even eye contact, and also taking your earphones out.
Yeah.
You see these people with the big cans on their head and the mobile phones there, so their awareness doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So somebody can come up quite easily.
Yeah.
Somebody can come up quite easily. So it is about being aware of what's going on around you constantly.
Mm-hmm. I can actually attest to this. I wrote about this. I'm also working on a book, as I mentioned. And I lived in the UK myself. I don't know if I mentioned that to you, but I was in Belfast.
All right.
Yeah, I was in Belfast, and I was walking home one night, and I walked this route all the time, but I didn't realize it was like a danger zone, because they have the couples up there. And I had headphones in, and I was walking, minding my own business, and then I felt something, and I heard something, and I was like, did somebody just throw an egg at me? And I looked, and it was a brick, and they'd thrown it, and it hit the wall. And I looked, and it was like 5 guys on the other side of the street. Yeah, so I can actually attest to that. And I did look at them, and I never took my eyes off them again, just to make sure no more bricks were coming. But yeah, that was just like by the grace of God, I didn't get smashed with a brick.
Oh, thank God for that. Going back to what you said there, you took that route. You said that you took a route. Did you set that route regular? Yeah. So that was so you become comfortable with that route. Mm-hmm. You never had a problem with that route. So you put your earphones in, you're nice and relaxed. So I won't say the word complacent because that's rude, but you switch off a little bit, you feel comfortable.
There was a difference though. I was walking actually earlier. Because normally, like I was working in an ad agency during the day, and then I worked in the Canadian Rockies bar in the evening, and so I usually got off at 1, right? And so I think everybody was asleep by then, but it wasn't busy, so I went home early, and that's when the brick came, because I think people were still awake. So that was the change in the dynamic that put me in danger. But I was trusting of that route because I hadn't suspected anything like that would ever happen.
You don't, do you? You know, at the end of the day, you're just walking down the street, but there's so many strange people out there nowadays. You really got to step out of that comfort box. Yeah. And it's not being... People use the word paranoid. It's not paranoid. It's heightened awareness. Mm-hmm. And you've got to be aware of what's going on around you all the time, because the world has changed. The world has got a bit freaker.
Yeah,
and we've got to be aware of that. Mm-hmm. We've got to be aware of that. So self-defense is a must for people. But I always say to people, please check the instructor out. Make sure the instructor knows how to teach. You know, because I've got lots and lots of medals and certificates and world championships and everything. But we're always learning. You know, we're always learning. And what you teach one person won't suit another person. So it's got to be, you know, it's got to be tailored for that person.
Yeah. Okay, so since you've dedicated your entire life to being a bodyguard and to helping teach others how to defend themselves, if you weren't doing this work, what else do you think you would be doing instead?
Ooh, interesting question.
I know you're an author, so that might be something.
I know. This time last year, I actually walked away from the security industry. I applied for a job as a train wanted to be a train conductor, just lost the plot. There was things going on here. And I thought, I've just had enough of security. And then people said to me, why are you being so stubborn? So he ended up going back teaching for somebody as a freelance person. But my book is something that I've wanted to push. It's not about spreading the word, it's trying to help people become safer, teach people a little bit more about close protection and what it is. As a kid, I was bullied. I was bullied drastically. So my first book took me 10 years. So that's called Overcoming Bullies.
Okay, Overcoming Bullies. It's beautiful.
Yes. So it was Overcoming Bullies. I'll send you some of these clips. So basically, I was bullied, fought against for a long, long time because, you know, there's so many people who've gone through bullying. Even the people I protected, they've been bullied. So one thing that I'd love to do, and it is a big passion, of one day going around doing talks about anti-bullying, promoting awareness, promoting safety, etc. Not per se about close protection, but more about how to defend yourself and how to become more aware. Motivational as well. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who want to get into close protection, but they've been sort of told you'll never do it. I was one of those people, and that's why I'm so proud of what I've done, because I broke the mould. In my career, there's not many people who can actually attest, using that word, to have actually done it honestly. Yeah. There's a lot of people who fabricate saying that they've done this, that, and the other, but all mine's referenced and testimonied. Mm-hmm. So it can be done.
Yes. Okay, so you currently have 3 books, right?
Yes.
All right. Are you working on any others in the works?
I think once I've got my 3rd book, because my 3rd book was it was a bit of a gamble, this book, because I've actually put over 150 pages of training material in the book.
This is the Bodyguard, right?
Yeah, so this has got just short of 400 pages.
Oh, wow.
I've done a documentary. Mm-hmm. So the documentary was aimed to actually promote the book. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I'd like to do. And one day maybe get a 4th book out there about, not just about close protection, but about how to deal with life and everything, you know, and basically, you know, achieve things. As a world champion, people say, when somebody says, you're a world champion, I won't be sat here, be sat on a boat somewhere nice and in the Bahamas or somewhere, because it's all the time people don't look at you as though you're going to be a world champion, but I am. The medal's there, over there, you can't see it, but it is over there. But yeah, it's one day maybe in the 4th book. Yeah. Another documentary is probably high on my agenda, but again, it's got to be planned properly.
Yeah. Well, I came across your book, The Bodyguard, and I was struck by how personal your story is. And raised on a tough council estate in Manchester, you turned your adversity into mastery. So this is why you're like the master, as people say. So I was just curious as to what inspired you to write this book, and what do you hope for your readers to walk away with it after they're done reading it?
That's a good question. Thank you. The first book took me 10 years to write, and I wasn't actually going to publish the book. It was just basically when I went on holiday with my wife, I used to scribble notes. Mm-hmm. And I was looking after 2 footballers, and one of them said, why don't you write a book? I said, well, I have. And then eventually I spoke to this guy, a wonderful guy, I've got to mention him, he's called Ian McHarg. And if anyone wants anything editing, Ian is brilliant. He's an ex-serviceman, he's a brilliant guy. And he turned the book around in 4 months. From 10 years, he put it into and he got to #1 on Amazon.
Wow, congratulations.
And people, you know, people have read the book, and they've took different things away from it. From being bullied, that's why it inspired me, because I was bullied as a kid. I grew up on a really, really hard council estate, like many people. No parents. My mum, should we say, God bless her. I didn't have a real dad. I had 4 dads, one after the other. So I didn't have any parenting. So I actually brought myself up. So I could have gone the wrong way very, very quickly. So what inspired me was basically overcoming the bullies and people saying, you'll never do that. And the amount of people, even family and friends, used to say, you'll never achieve anything. And that's what I want to get out there. So when I publish anything on any social media, it's not about me going, look at me. It's about me saying, listen, I did it.
Prove them wrong.
You've just got to take that little bit of faith in yourself.
Yeah.
Say again, sorry.
I said, you proved them wrong.
Proving them wrong is one thing, but also proving that you can do it. You know, that's one of the biggest things when you actually turn around and say, you know, I have done this.
Yeah.
I was a world champion. I am a 9th dan. You know, and those are the sort of things where you can say to other people, if I can do it, you can do it. And that's why I always say to people, even when I said to you this month before about your book, if I can write a book, anyone can write a book.
Yeah. And I actually posted something
You
about
just
that
need to write from
yesterday. It's like other people's success is just proof that you can do it, and that you have to prove to yourself.
Yeah.
And I can't remember. I said it a little better. I was in the flow, but that's basically what that is. Okay. So on that, what is your philosophy for success that you want to share?
Very, very briefly, I'll share something which is quite dear to me. I lost a business. I used to employ 300 staff, and over 10 years we grew this business to a massive. It was huge, and overnight I lost it. Boom, gone. The whole business went. Nearly lost my home. It's not a pity story. People go, "Oh, woe is me." It's not. That was my biggest catalyst for me to get off my backside. Mm-hmm. Now, while that was going, I lost my dad, my sister, my brother, my mum and my niece within 7 years, as well as losing the business. So I could have easily crawled into a hole and just gave up. But there was something nagging me in the back of my head saying, you can't. And you've got to find something which is going to drive you forward. And I think what was driving me forward, it wasn't me saying, listen, I can do this, I'm going to get better. It was just that I didn't want to get beat. I didn't want to get beat. And that comes down to my competitiveness as a fighter. Sadly, we did full contacts. So I've lost teeth, cheekbones broke, all my ribs have been smashed, my fingers have been snapped. Because we never wore protection in those days, just to go.
Yeah.
But it was part and parcel of what we trained for. So that mentality. But it doesn't mean. I mean, I hate violence. Mm-hmm. Oh, I declare that. No, I hate violence. But that has given me that motivation to push forward. So when you compete on the mat, it's completely different to when you're working as a bodyguard. There's 2 different hats. You've got to have that discipline where you never touch a person. It's always about that prevention. And that's what one of my biggest motivation is, basically preventing it constantly, but always trying to achieve more by pushing myself. Probably a little bit too much. I'm 65 soon, so I'm getting a little bit slower than I used to be, but I'm still pushing on with things.
Beautiful. Well, we're at our time for the day. So thank you so much for being with us today, Phil. Your story is a reminder that strength isn't just physical, it's mental, emotional, and intuitive. And to our audience, remember to check out his books, and that greatness lives in all of us. And whether you're training in a dojo, learning self-defense, practicing more spatial awareness, or just trusting your intuition, your journey matters. And this is Angela Ahimsa signing off from Jesse TV, live from Toronto, Ontario. And if you would like to catch the replay on Roku, Meta, NCG Television, or jessefm.com. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
It's your man Jay Wu out here in the tropical paradise, and they say you don't bring sand to the beach, but alongside me I have the beautiful co-host Yaya.
Yaya in the building, and we have amazing news for you.
We're outside, not in the building, and the sand is out here on the beach. We're here to talk about Who Got Next Hour on Jess TV.
Hey, and I know it is at what, Tuesday.
I guess.
You know, wait, let me do that. And I know it is at every Tuesday. 10 o'clock.
10
Okay.
o'clock. Oh wow, yes. You can catch Demasha with the Zip Mouth Motivation Show. You can catch Jay Cabrera with Indie Vibing with Jay. You can catch Yaya with Reggae with Yaya
all the time.
And we can't forget Who Got Next Indie Artist video show. So stay tuned every Tuesday night, 10 p.m. right here on Jess TV.
Yes, it's your man
And your girl.
and your gal.
That's right.
All right.
Peace. Let's have some fun.
Let's have some fun.
Yes. All right.
Black out if they act out. Yeah, I did that.